and welcome to Undivided. I'm Brandi, Kruse, our final live show of the week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. The title of today's show is Speechless because if I didn't have to speak to do my job, there's a trio of crime stories we're going to discuss today that would otherwise render me speechless. But fortunately for all of you, I will talk about them. Also, Washington's Attorney General is asking the federal government for more help to fight the fentanyl crisis, which I think is a good thing. However, I do think it comes after years of the Attorney General of the state, who wants to be the next governor, ignoring issues that would have helped the situation and help to prevent it from getting so bad. Also, later on, Miranda's going to join us on Florida Report with a particular hat that she's wearing today in solidarity with our friend, 12-year-old Jaden from Colorado, patriotic young man. All of that and more coming up. But first, if you have not subscribed to support the show already, please do so. It is how we continue to do this show full-time, 5 days a week if you're a subscriber, because, of course, we have Sundays with subscribers, which is a great benefit of being a subscriber. undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, just $5 a month. So I want to start with the fentanyl crisis, which we know Washington state has the fastest growing overdose rate when it comes to fentanyl of any state in the nation. It is a crisis here. I've said before, though, I don't need to see the numbers. I don't need to see the data. All I need to do is walk downtown in any, not even major city. It doesn't even have to be Seattle. In many of the cities across Western Washington, in particular, also in Central Washington, also on the eastern side of the state, and you can see people shooting up drugs out in the open, overdosing from fentanyl or trank, and their skin all wearing away. It's just gross stuff. And so again, I don't need anyone to tell me, including Bob Ferguson, that we are in the midst of a fentanyl crisis. But Bob Ferguson is requesting from the federal government a little more assistance when it comes to dealing with this issue, particularly in Everett, Yakima, and Spokane. So essentially what he's asking, and he wrote a letter to Merrick Garland, he is saying that he wants these three cities added to a federal emphasis when it comes to dealing with the fentanyl crisis, essentially getting them a little bit more resources and being part of this federal task force. So he told the Attorney General in part, designating Everett, Spokane, or Yakima as Operation Overdrive sites could have ripple effects benefiting surrounding communities. Everett's position on the I-5 corridor makes it a deadly hub for traffickers smuggling fentanyl from Mexico to British Columbia. Spokane's position on I-90 makes it attractive to traffickers smuggling fentanyl throughout eastern Washington and to neighboring states. The increased flow of fentanyl has also caused a disproportionate number of overdose deaths in tribal nations close to Spokane and Yakima. He ends his letter by saying, given the surge of overdose deaths locally unparalleled across the country, we'll come back to that, it is imperative that we foster strong partnerships and improve efforts to share information across local, state, and federal law enforcement. Our communities are counting on us to act swiftly and collaboratively to stem the loss of lives. All right. If I just take the letter at face value, I agree. I agree with everything Attorney General Bob Ferguson said. I think that we need better partnerships with the federal government. I think that those communities in particular, for the reasons that he laid out in terms of the route of traffickers, makes a lot of sense. We know in Yakima there has been an incredible issue when it comes to trafficking and when it comes to overdoses. I agree 100%. The issue for me is the messenger. And the issue for me are all the things the messenger has done and not done that have made this crisis worse, that he refuses to acknowledge, even as he goes around the state, prepares to make his bid for governor official. I will point out that when Trump was in office, I mean, how many times did we hear Bob Ferguson talk about all the times he'd sued the Trump administration? How many of those lawsuits had to do with issues related to the southern border and to immigration that had nothing at all to do with making the southern border more secure so drugs weren't trafficked up to Washington state, that had to do with holding the Mexican drug cartel accountable so that drugs didn't come to Washington state? None of them. He had lawsuits pertaining to border wall funding, trying to stop border wall funding. He had lawsuits pertaining to family separation, adding a question about immigration to the census. He had travel ban 1, 2, and 3 lawsuits. He sued over DACA. I mean, Bob Ferguson levied a number of lawsuits against the Trump administration that had to do with his feelings about how Trump was treating immigrants, mostly, and actively working against funding for a southern border wall, which do I think that would stop the drug traffickers? No, but it can't hurt. Putting another structure on the southern border to make it more difficult to traffic drugs across the southern border wouldn't hurt. Now, on the contrary, how many times have you heard Bob Ferguson speak up about the policies that have led to and contributed to the drug crisis on our streets? Did you hear Bob Ferguson speak up at all when the Blake decision came down that nullified our state's felony drug possession statute? Did you hear him openly, actively encourage state lawmakers to try to come up with a solution so police departments had an avenue where they could get people off the streets who were killing themselves on the streets by using drugs? No. Did you hear Bob Ferguson speak out against the law that was passed by Democratic state lawmakers in 2021 that made it nearly impossible for police to pursue suspects? He didn't speak out about that. That law made this a haven for drug traffickers who knew that if they were carrying drugs into Washington state, across the state, into our communities, and they got pulled over, they could simply drive away. Did Bob Ferguson speak out about that in the name of saving our state from the scourge of fentanyl? No. And I've mentioned this before. Has Bob Ferguson, Jay Inslee, Dow Constantine, have they spoken out at all about the need to secure our southern border to make sure that it's more difficult for drug traffickers to get these narcotics into our country? No. They've spoken out time and time again against the Trump administration, against Republicans, about what they feel like are humanitarian issues at the southern border, which I don't disagree with a lot of that. It is a humanitarian crisis at the southern border, but it's also a security crisis. And it is a crisis that are causing at record rates Washingtonians to lose their lives. But this has been political. It's been politicized to an extent where both parties are comfortable just letting people die because we don't want to talk about this issue holistically, and way more so Democrats than Republicans. I'm not going to both sides that. Democrats, for political reasons, including Attorney General Bob Ferguson, they don't want to touch the issue of border security. They don't want to touch it, but he's happy filing lawsuit after lawsuit on issues related to the treatment of immigrant families and the treatment of people coming up, even if they come up illegally, through our southern border. And he is comfortable not speaking up, not speaking out against some of the laws that have been passed by his party in Olympia when it comes to limiting the ability of law enforcement to do something about the individuals who are trafficking deadly drugs into our community. So when I see Bob Ferguson pleading with Attorney General Merrick Garland to help some of our communities in our state who are experiencing, as he said in the letter, unparalleled levels of overdoses, more so than any state in the nation, I have a hard time taking him seriously. I have a hard time when he writes this letter saying, wow, things are really, really bad in Washington state. Please let these communities be part of Operation Overdrive so we can save lives. I would be all on board with that if it weren't for how many things he has actively done, including staying silent. If it weren't for how many things he has actively done to make this crisis worse. And now he wants to be the next governor of Washington state. And I'm telling you right now, that would be a disastrous ordeal for the state of Washington and a disastrous ordeal for our ability to combat crises like the fentanyl crisis, because he hasn't done a dang thing to make that situation better. So you can write all the freaking letters you want. You can write all the freaking letters you want, but that is so incredibly disingenuous. All right, we have a couple crime stories today. I realize we've been very crime heavy this week. We kind of have had a theme of the week of the deterioration of our criminal justice system. And I feel like the reason we're hearing more about this is, one, it's happening with more frequency, but police departments have had enough. They are speaking out about these things. They want people to know we're doing our jobs, even with our limited resources, even with politicians at the highest levels of government who hate us. We're doing our jobs. Why can't the other aspects of the criminal justice system work as well? There was a story out of Pierce County, which again has to do with this no bail issue with these activist judges who somebody does something that clearly makes them a danger to the community, and the judges either don't care or they aren't factoring that into their considerations when it comes to setting a reasonable amount of bail to make sure that someone will come back to court to answer for their crimes. So the Pierce County Sheriff's Office, they're putting people on blast on social media. So they said that they had a woman, 27 years old, which is still really young. I know that's not a juvenile, but 27 years old. This woman stole a car to escape arrest, okay? Wasn't just a joyride. She was trying to flee from law enforcement. And she assaulted deputies. So it started, this was, I think this past Monday. So the woman had stolen a Kia. So the deputy, ran her. It was in a grocery store parking lot, figured out that the plate that was on it, a temporary plate, didn't belong to a Kia at all. It belonged to a Toyota Tacoma. So they're like, okay, that's obviously a stolen vehicle situation. And it had been, by the way, a vehicle that was stolen at gunpoint by a female suspect. So the deputy's like, wonder if this chick who's in this Kia that has the wrong plates on it might be the chick who stole it at gunpoint, right? So now they've got a situation on their hands. He calls people in. She, steals a vehicle to flee the scene, ends up crashing it into a tree, is accused of assaulting deputies. She gets charged with 2 counts of assault in the second degree, theft of a motor vehicle, attempting to elude a police vehicle, and unlawful possession of a stolen vehicle. She ends up pleading not guilty in her arraignment on Tuesday. Guess what the bail was? Nicole, you care to guess what the judge said bail at for this upstanding young woman?
I'm going to guess 0.
0. It's like, you laugh, so you don't cry. Released her on her own personal recognizance. I remember a time in this state where, and I used to cover, remember, crime and justice. That was my job. I'd be at first appearances almost every single day down at the King County Jail. That was our only way to know what happened overnight. They didn't have the police blotters and they weren't putting stuff out on Twitter. So we'd sit there and we'd watch people come in. We'd hear what they were coming in for. There'd be arguments made about bail and a judge would set it. I would very rarely see a case come in where it was PR, where you were released with no bail. That would only be done if it was maybe the person's identity of the suspect was in question or something where you're like, is this the guy? Do we have it? Have they been charged yet? But it was very rare. Now it happens all the time. Now you can allegedly assault a law enforcement officer, steal a motor vehicle, be in possession of a stolen vehicle, attempt to elude law enforcement, and you can get released with no bail. This defies common sense. Again, this is why we do this show. Trying to encourage people who have a brain, who can hear the facts of this and say, that's not right. We can't be doing that. There have to be consequences for this behavior. Encouraging you to vote for people who feel the same way that we do. Who are going to make sure and demand that there are laws on the books that can prevent against this kind of stuff. A governor in the governor's office who's willing to appoint judges who aren't going to release someone like this 27-year-old woman on her personal recognizance. That's what we're trying to work toward. And in order to do that, we have to bring attention to it. Now, I will say, again, I titled this episode Speechless because we taped our next interview before the show. I don't know if I've ever been mouth agape so much during an interview in my entire life. So the police chief in Enumclaw, a man named Tim Floyd, and we love Enumclaw. What an awesome community. We went down there for one of our meet and greets, beautiful downtown, cool people. Well, Enumclaw right now has a motor vehicle theft problem. The rates of stolen vehicles are the highest they've ever been in Enumclaw. And the chief of police down there, Tim Floyd, is raising the alarm bells and saying, hey, these are juveniles. And our officers are doing their job. We know who's stealing the vehicles. We're arresting them. And then judges are kicking them loose. And these kids are learning that there are no consequences for their actions. And if they're learning that at the age of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, do you really think that they're going to be productive adults, productive law-abiding adults? Of course not. So anyway, Chief Floyd in Enumclaw was nice enough to join us and stun me with some of the details of these car thefts. Chief Floyd, welcome to Undivided.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So August is the highest month that your town has had ever for motor vehicle thefts?
Well, I can't say forever, but I've been here about 10 years. I'm in my 26th year in law enforcement, but I've been with Enumclaw for about 10 years. And it's the highest number month that I can remember since I've worked here.
Are you guys also experiencing, is it mostly Kias and Hyundais, or is it kind of anything?
It's kind of anything. We've had a couple of commercial burglaries at one of our car dealerships, and that has contributed to a large number of well, a large portion of that number are cars that have been stolen off the dealership lot.
Oh, yeah. And I actually, coming up next week on the show, we're going to be hearing from a couple that owns a used car dealership up in the north end, so in Snohomish County, and they're dealing with a similar thing too and just having a heck of a time getting help. You have said that you think that juveniles might be to blame for what's going on.
Yeah, they are. We've had 3 commercial burglaries in the last 6 weeks, and have made arrests in all 3 of them. And it's all the same group of juveniles. And we have booked them into the King County Juvenile Detention Center, and they are released right back out to come right back to town to do it again.
All 3 times?
All 3 times. We've had some of the juveniles have been held for a couple of days, but some of the other juveniles are literally released the same day or the next morning. Earlier this week, we arrested a juvenile on Monday morning that we had booked into jail. I believe it was Sunday afternoon.
Are these local Enumclaw kids, or are they coming from elsewhere?
No, these are our local kids that we've been dealing with. And we were talking about the numbers, and it's, comparative to different jurisdictions. We're a small town. We had 36 cars stolen in 2022. And as of it stands right now in this moment, we've had 38 cars now stolen so far this year. So we took 2 more stolen car reports just last night.
When you say juveniles, how young are we talking?
They're ranging in age from 14 to 17.
For the love. So there's 2 things going through my mind right now. I mean, when I was a kid, right, and I grew up in kind of a rural area, small town area. I wouldn't call Enumclaw small town, but it's got that feel.
Yeah.
I mean, the prospect of getting even pulled over by a cop for speeding was enough to put the fear of God in me, like my, go home and get an ass whooping type stuff. So is there an element of this? If these are local kids, you know who they are. They've been arrested, some of them more than once for the same thing. I mean, for you, it's got to be going through your mind, what's going on at home.
Yeah, and we've had some conversations with some of the parents, and we are the bad guy, and they they are upset at us for arresting their child.
Wait a second. Okay, I'm like stunned. So they know that their child allegedly is stealing vehicles, and you're the bad guy for arresting them.
That's correct.
Okay. So then the criminal justice element of it, when you've got these juveniles, they get booked and they get right back out. What message do you think collectively this is sending to these kids?
Oh, there's no consequences. When we made an arrest Monday morning it was a burglary in progress. They had stolen a bunch of cars. We caught them. We arrested them. One of the kids was literally just laughing at us, just shrugging his shoulders like, this is no big deal. You guys put me in jail last week and I'm already back. This is no big deal. Literally just laughing at us. Because he knows he's going to we're going to book him in jail, and he's going to spend maybe a night there, maybe a day, and he's going to get right back out.
So, obviously that aspect of the criminal justice system is failing, and it's taught these kids that, hey, we're going to get back out on the streets. But what does the prosecutor's office say about this? Are they going to pursue charges? Have charges been filed? Might there be some comeuppance for these kids down the road?
I sure hope so. We are following through with writing our cases and filing them with the prosecutor's office. And I sure hope that they're going to get charged. And, we work closely with the prosecutors, but it is it's very frustrating when you make a great felony arrest and you put them, in Enumclaw, we have to drive them all the way downtown Seattle. So it's not close. And then they're literally back here within 24 hours doing the exact same thing.
Wow. And it's so in line. We just had the sheriff of Thurston County on the show the other day. They go out, got 6 kids in a car, 5 juveniles, 1 18-year-old, led them on a high-speed chase, hit and run, fled on foot, And then the 18-year-old just got kicked, no bail. So I guess, Chief, what's your hope here? I mean, what do you think it's going to take to turn this around so that the criminal justice system is actually holding people accountable?
Well, I don't want to get political. That's not under my purview, but there's definitely some changes that need to be made. I'm all for reform and trying to always improve and make things better. But I think a lot of communities and a lot of law enforcement agencies are having a lot of difficulty with, there's a criminal justice system. We play a role, we do our part, and then they can move on to the next phase. And it doesn't seem like the next phase is always doing what at least we expect them to do, which is hold people accountable.
I mean, I'm shocked by some of that. Some of it doesn't surprise me, but the parents in particular, the response you're getting from them, I mean, I don't even want to know what would have happened if I walked into my house and told my parents I got arrested for a felony.
Right.
But I don't know if I'd be here today, to be honest. It's a little bit of an exaggeration. But you put out this, you said, I don't want to get political, but you guys put out this, I think it was like a 10-point, it was a graphic basically telling your residents how not to get your car stolen, or how to make it less likely. And it had, 10 points of just pieces of advice. And I wanted to add one to it that said, vote for different people, because I feel like that's just what it's going to take to get us out of this situation. My opinion, not yours. Chief, is there any thought, I guess, that you're just going to tell your officers don't investigate these crimes if it's not going anywhere?
Oh, absolutely not. We take an oath to protect the citizens of our town, and that's what we're going to do. And we will keep arresting, we will keep booking, and we will always do our part to make our community safe. That is what we signed up to do. My police officers and police officers all around the state and country go out every day and risk their safety for people that we don't know. And we just want to have good follow-up on the back end of the criminal justice system. For when we do our part, the rest of the system hopefully will do their part.
Not too much to ask. It's common sense. All right, Enumclaw Police Chief Tim Floyd, we appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Yeah, anybody else speechless? Insane. Our comment stream was actually pretty good. You guys are lit up right now. Now, I don't mean to anger you so much on a Thursday, our final live show of the week, but as if that story isn't bad enough, our next crime story is actually worse. And if that one didn't have your blood boiling about these kids who think they're above the law, this next one will, I think, enrage you to the point where hopefully you'll take action by knocking on the doors for some candidates who might change things, because we've got to turn this anger, what do I say on Mondays? Turn this frustration into action somehow. Because if we just bottle it up, and if social media is our only outlet, one, it's not going to make a difference. And two, we're just going to go crazy. So coming up next, remember the guy who tried to kidnap a bikini barista by pulling her out of the window of a stand? Well, he is back out on the streets, having already apparently done his time. We will discuss. But first, I've been talking about Sell with Wes, sellwithwes.com, a wonderful real estate agent in our area. Wes Jones is awesome. He and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to get the most possible eyeballs on your listing. And they have something called the Listing Boost Concierge Service. So if you're trying to sell your home, you know it needs some updates, but you're like, I don't got the time to do that. I don't have the money to do that. They can do it for you, just like they did for Susan in Federal Way.
I knew I had to paint. I knew I needed to get new flooring. I needed to get new lighting. I told him up front that I was very interested, that I did not have the time or the finances to do what needed to be done. And he immediately jumped in with, well, I do. Work started immediately. And I would say in 2 to 3 weeks, they had landscaping done. They had all the painting done. The new floors were put in. All the lighting was put in. It just was all so fast. And the rest is history. It was on the market for 7 days. I was able to get well over listing price.
To be specific, Susan got 20 offers, sold it for 15% over list price, and ended up getting $200,000 more than an investor offered her before the renovations. Yeah, love that story. So if you're in the market to sell your home, check out a few real estate agents, but don't choose one until you've checked out our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. You can start on their website by simply using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. A man who tried to kidnap a bikini barista by pulling her out of the window of the stand late at night is out of jail and walking free. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. 50 days in jail. Apparently, that's all you get if you try to kidnap someone from their place of employment in Washington state. Every single one of you will remember the video of this because it was so brazen. So this happened in Auburn. Guy named Matthew Darnell caught on video trying to pull out a bikini barista into his truck. I mean, like a moron. I don't know if he thought it wasn't going to be on video, but he had this big obvious tattoo. I don't remember what it said. It said something. What did it say? It was so obvious. And then his truck had these decals, and they caught the guy within days because people are like, oh, hey, I know exactly who that is. That's Matthew Darnell. So anyway, and this was a terrifying crime when it happened. And I will give every news outlet credit because they were wall to wall with that video. What did it say?
It says Chevrolet.
Chevrolet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not only is he dangerous, but he's also an idiot. So anyway, Matthew Darnell, this happened in January, just January of this past year. Well, he has already pled guilty through a plea deal, and he is back out, living 2 miles away from the bikini barista stand where this happened. Again, this is August, so in the matter of 8 months, he goes from crime to being completely done with the criminal justice system in terms of time behind bars. This is insane stuff. So this is the headline from Cairo 7. Advocacy group speaks out on 50-day jail sentence for Auburn man who tried to kidnap a barista. And remember, this isn't, not that it would make it any better, but this was a stranger. This barista didn't know him. It wasn't like some domestic disturbance. Again, I'm not saying that would be any better, but this was a stranger on stranger crime where he tried to kidnap her. And I want you to think about, to do what? What he would have done to her if he was able to get her in his vehicle. What his intentions were. Probably to kill her. Probably to rape her. That's really freaking crazy stuff. So anyway, 50-day sentence on a plea deal. So the King County Prosecutor's Office, I will give their spokesperson, Casey McNerney, is the best spokesperson working in any public office in the state right now. He's a former journalist, and every time there's one of these cases where he knows that there's going to be anger and frustration, he sends out proactively, before anybody even asks for it, he sends out an email with all the information on the case. So I'm going to give him credit for that. And I actually think he is correct in his interpretation of what they did here and why. But this speaks to the problems at the state level with our sentencing guidelines and the fact that we don't have, frankly, stiffer punishments for people who try to kidnap women at random. I will also note, before I dive into the details of why this plea deal came to be, that the victim in this case agreed to it. So I do think that is important, that she agreed that this was the best path forward given the circumstances. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't mean that I think this guy should be walking around Auburn right now, although I hope and pray that if you see him, you shame him. Yeah, I don't usually say stuff like that. But you see the guy with the Chevrolet tattoo? Call him a creepy pervert. So, okay, let's go back to this, all seriousness. So this is from the King County Prosecutor's Office. So they basically say that this has to do with offender scores. He didn't have a criminal history. So that factored into, him, he would have got kind of the low end of the range for the crime. Casey McNerney goes on to say if he were convicted at trial, that there would be no option for mandatory DOC supervision, and there would be no option for a standalone no contact order with the victim. So instead, he pled guilty to felony harassment, and then he agreed to some additional conditions, including 12 months of supervision with DOC. He is required to continue mental health treatment, and he cannot use drugs or alcohol. That would be a violation. You'd have to go back to court. And he has a lifetime civil protection order with the victim that will be in effect until 2123. So the prosecutor's office, in combination with the victim, was essentially weighing, okay, the difference of, if he had taken this plea versus if he had gone to trial wouldn't be that substantial. So if we avoid trial, we can tack on some of these extra things. Fine. But 1 to 3 months as the standard statewide range for someone who commits what the plea was felony harassment set by state lawmakers. That's insane. If you try to kidnap a stranger, again, your goal is what are the goals for kidnapping? Are there any other things you would kidnap someone for besides rape, murder, or maybe some sort of financial, if you're living in movie world, where you're going to hold them for ransom? This is an incredibly serious crime, and I just can't see somebody spending less than 5 years in prison for it, because you are such a profound danger to the community. So this one's on state lawmakers. And if we truly believe, I go back to the Wendy Traynor case that we talked about extensively on the show last week. Shot in the back of the head by her estranged boyfriend, an act of domestic violence committed with a firearm. And then you have this guy again. I want to name him again just so we know his name's out there in the community. Matthew Darnell. If you're a woman out there, do not date this man. I don't know, maybe he's married. Don't date him. Who tries to pull a woman out of the window at her work. And I just think of what is the message that we're sending to men who prey on women? Don't we care about that anymore? Don't we care about domestic violence anymore? It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's like that's why I don't want to hear any state lawmakers when October rolls around and it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I don't want to hear them say jack, unless they're doing everything in their power to make sure that women who are victimized, that survivors get the support they need and the justice that they deserve. And in fact, I feel an op-ed coming on in October. I'm going to send it to the Tacoma News Tribune as soon as Domestic Violence Awareness Month hits. 20 days before the sentencing for Wendy Traynor's killer. Oh, you guys care about domestic violence awareness? Oh, I didn't realize it, because you're about to give Wendy Traynor's killer, 7 years in jail. Letting this dude out 50 days later. Crazy. And he had to do more than 50 days because he was in jail awaiting all of this, but ridiculous. Frankly, unbelievable. All right, coming up next, we have a very special edition of Florida Report. Miranda is going to be showing solidarity with our friend, the 12-year-old Jaden in Colorado, who got kicked out of class for having a Gadsden flag patch. Very much looking forward to it. First, I've been talking about my friends at First Mark Insurance, and I've heard from so many of you who said that you are gearing up to take the First Mark Challenge. Either you already have or you're about to, so let me know how it goes. Mike and I took the First Mark Challenge back in the spring. We ended up switching all our insurance over to be handled by First Mark, and we're so happy we did. First of all, their service is exceptional, but also we got much better insurance for the same price. So we're sort of like, well, we should have done that sooner. FirstMarkInsurance.com. Dave Taylor is the CEO of First Mark, and he talked about what the purpose of the First Mark Challenge is.
We believe and we say that we will help 100% of the people that we work with. Okay. Now that doesn't mean necessarily that 100% of the people we work with are going to become First Mark clients, but we believe that we will actually help 100% of the people, whether that be stay with your current carrier, but let's modify your coverage a bit so you're better protected, or ultimately, hopefully come over to First Mark. We're going to put you with a different company and give you better coverage, right? So the challenge is really challenging individuals to give us an opportunity to prove that to them. That's really what the First Mark Challenge is.
And it's an awesome learning opportunity, because insurance confused the heck out of me. And I'm like, what do all these line items mean? Do I need this? Do I not need this? That's what the First Mark Challenge is all about. Helping you figure out, what do you need? What do you need coverage for? What do you not need coverage for? And then going out to shop the market for you to see if they can't save you a little bit of money in the process. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. Take the First Mark Challenge. They work for you. All right, in addition to the devastation from Hurricane Idalia in Florida, which we're going to talk about today, I also had to talk to my sister after this controversy in Colorado over the Gadsden flag, because there is perhaps no other state in the union where the Gadsden flag is more celebrated than in the Sunshine State. Let's get to it in our segment, Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, God bless America.
God bless America.
What'd you get there?
I couldn't help myself. I had to wear my favorite hat.
Oh, in solidarity with the 12-year-old from Colorado. I love it.
In solidarity. And honestly, we've talked about this flag on the show before. It is one of my favorite historical American flags.
I don't know if anyone has ever looked prettier in a "Don't Tread on Me" hat.
It's a little aggressive. Like the back of the hat says like liberty or death, don't tread. The front says ready to strike. Right. I got it at a gas station in the middle of Florida.
That doesn't surprise me. That's a gas station hat for sure. But you were also telling me, and I thought this was funny because we were chatting and we were talking about this 12-year-old from Colorado who had the "Don't Tread on Me" patch. In Florida, that flag is so uncontroversial that it's actually a license plate option.
Yeah, and they made it a license plate option. Actually, at the beginning of this year, you could start ordering it as a specialty plate, and it's pretty cool looking. It's solid black, yellow letters, and has the little flag on the side. So it is definitely not a problem if Jaden wants to come to school in Florida. He can wear his patch, no problem.
Do you have one of those yet?
What?
A license
No,
plate?
actually, I don't. I had renewed my tags, and I'm like, for 2 years, I'm like, let me wait till I have to renew my tags, and then I'll do it all at once. So next year, I will have that for sure. Because honestly, I just want a black license plate, and it's the only black license plate option in Florida. So
Of course you do. So goth. Every warm-blooded American man just fell in love with you, by the way, with this hat on. And woman, who knows? I don't judge.
who knows?
Okay, I do think we need to talk about Idalia, the hurricane that has really devastated areas of Florida. And you were showing me it caused a giant tree to fall on the governor's mansion.
Yeah, a huge 100-year-old oak tree got knocked over on top of the governor's mansion in Tallahassee, and DeSantis' wife and kids were at home when it happened. So that can't be, it's terrifying, even if a tree doesn't fall in your house when you're dealing with a storm that strong. But for a storm, the winds to be so strong that it's going to kind of rip out the roots of a 100-year-old tree, it kind of gives you an idea of how scary these things can actually be.
Yeah, and there's been pretty widespread damage. Not where you are in Miami. Are you guys okay?
Miami is unscathed once again. I don't know. There's something changed, and we just don't get them much here anymore. I know, knock on wood, but we really just don't.
Yeah, I mean, but in terms of you've lived there for a long time, how many years?
I've lived here for 18 years this year, and my first year here in 2005 was when all those storms hit. I moved here the week Katrina hit. We had Wilma, Ophelia. We had a bunch of them that year. And then after that, we didn't have any, not a single, not even a tropical storm hit until like 2016. We got hit with Irma. And after that, nothing.
Yeah, it sounds like Idalia, though, made landfall as a Category 3 in Florida at Keaton Beach. I mean, can you characterize, I guess, from all the storms you've been through, the seriousness of this one from what you're hearing about the devastation?
When a storm hits on the Gulf side, it tends to be a little bit more devastating. The Gulf is a little bit less deep than this side, so you get these storm surges that just push inland, and they really devastate a lot of those low-lying areas. I mean, Florida in itself is just low-lying as it is, but when you have storms come from the Gulf side, they really do push a lot of water in. There's an obscene amount of flooding. On top of the fact that Florida has a huge housing insurance issue, this is just going to add insult to injury for anybody on the West Coast. It's still reeling from the last storm that I think was last year that they got hit with in Fort Myers. So it is going to be, I know there's still, there's been no reports of death. So that's always a good thing to lead with, but the property damage is going to be completely devastating once the storm and all the waters kind of subside.
Yeah, and you say West Coast of Florida. Out here on the West Coast.
West Coast of Florida.
It's always it's interesting to just hear about, the natural disaster issues you guys deal with versus us. I mean, ours, our big fear is obviously earthquakes, but then we have wildfires. Wildfires cause insurance issues for us here. But I remember there's many times where you guys were at your place in Miami Beach and you put all your valuables and everything that was important to you in the dishwasher, which is actually genius because it's waterproof. And so, it's just, different parts of the country and different natural disasters, and just to see sort of the preparation and reaction to all of them is interesting. But we're thinking of everybody in Florida. We didn't discuss this on the show earlier this week because I wanted to wait until you're on. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez already ended his presidential bid.
Yeah, he worked really hard, him and his campaign, to get qualified for that debate. And honestly, I think that if you can't get your feet on those stages, like on those debate stages in the early game, like it's really hard to come back from that. And I actually, it bothers me that it's so difficult to get on the debate stage, but I also understand why you can't just have 35 people standing up there wanting to be president. You really got to narrow it down. But it does bother me that somebody so qualified and that has so much to offer the country couldn't get a little bit more of a foot in the door. But, we're happy to have him back. Obviously, Florida has its own needs. He's done wonders here in Miami, so he's going to continue to do that. And he put a really nice statement out about how nice it was to kind of share his success that he's had here in Miami with other leaders around the country. And in addition to that, like he talks a lot about how the Republican Party is starting to become a home for a lot of Latino Americans. Latinos feel very left out by the left and a lot of the efforts they're putting into like equality and whatnot. So they're finding a pretty solid home on the conservative end of things. And he's very welcoming. And he just kind of talked about how, suburban women and young people, professionals, entrepreneurs, these are the people that are going to carry the elections in the next few years. And if the GOP, if they really want to win elections in a real way, they're going to have to come to the middle and really just kind of like focus on these people that basically are the beating heart of America. So.
Yeah. And I share the sentiment that I wish he could have made one debate stage, because I think he would have skyrocketed. He's really just so smart. He's whip smart, really focused on the issues and really informed on some of these issues and what has made Miami very successful. But unfortunately, there does have to be some sort of cutoff. And I agree with his decision to say, okay, if I can't make the debate stage, and most Americans don't know who I am, how am I going to get a foot out there? I still pray to God that somebody considers him as a VP choice, because he would just do so well in that role. All right, Miranda, love the hat. Wear it proudly. Thank you.
Actually, let me say before we leave, I was going to wear this to a barbecue the other day when it was like a dad outfit barbecue. And so I had this hat and then my join or die shirt on. And everybody's like, you're dressed like a dad? I'm like, yeah, I'm a dad going through my Revolutionary War phase.
You're dressed like our dad.
I'm dressed like our dad. Yes. But there was a history teacher at the barbecue who deeply appreciated my outfit at the time. So
oh my gosh, I love it.
I encourage anybody who has these really cool historical kind of American hats to just go ahead and wear them and be proud and educate anybody who has anything else to say about it.
I agree. They'll get triggered, but you can talk them down by explaining history to them. All right, Miranda, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good week.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
I feel compelled to note that my sister is not single, just in case anyone was getting any ideas after watching that video. Coming up next, we'll get to your questions and comments from the live stream, and there were some great ones this week. But first, I've been talking about Eastside Weight Loss Clinic, eastsideweightlossclinic.com. I'm down, I think, I got to weigh myself again. 36 pounds, but I'm feeling great. Nicole and I went to my final bridesmaid. I'm not a bridesmaid. I'm a bride. You're not a bridesmaid. You're a bride. Went to my final bridal dress fitting yesterday. Mm-hmm. How small did my waist look?
Awesome.
I mean,
so small.
There was also a little, what do you call them? A corset.
A corset.
So I told Nicole, I said,
like
I don't have to breathe. You just tie that baby as tight as you can.
As long as you don't pass out.
Yes, but I was so happy to go to my final bridal dress fitting and just feel really good. So that was an awesome experience. If you've been thinking about the program, I actually had an old colleague who texted me and said they're starting the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic plan. I was like, oh, text me if you have any questions. eastsideweightlossclinic.com, eastsideweightlossclinic.com. You can do the program from anywhere, and I highly recommend you just start by scheduling a free 15-minute consultation that you can also do virtually. You just get a chance to ask Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team questions about how the program works and really whether it's right for you, because not every weight loss program is going to be right for every person. And so it's important to get those questions answered on the front end. eastsideweightlossclinic.com, eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Okay, let's see what we got for questions, comments. Matt Gilbert with a $10 super chat says it's pumpkin spice Narcan season. Great. Thank you, Matt. Todd Welch says, when it comes to Bob Ferguson asking for federal assistance in designating 3 cities in Washington state as sort of part of a federal operation on fentanyl, Todd Welch says, asking for federal help with the fentanyl crisis is like letting your house turn into an inferno than asking for a garden hose. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much this is going to help. And like I said, any help is welcome at this point. I really think that any law enforcement resources in particular to deal with this is welcome, but you can't on the back end, fail to, for political reasons, talk about the real need to secure the southern border, talk about the need to have laws on the books in Washington state to make sure that drug traffickers and drug cartel aren't able to operate so freely here. That's just common sense stuff. And I really wish that Bob Ferguson, even if he wants to turn a new page during his race for governor, that's fine. Come on over to Team Common Sense. But I want to hear him use the weight of not only his office, but who he is politically in this state, and how many Democratic politicians will listen to what he says. He has a lot of power to do good and to save lives, and I want to see him use it. All right, Breaking Bolts with a $10 super chat. Quote, politics and partisanship will have no place in my attorney general's office. That is from Bob Ferguson's old AG campaign video on YouTube. Worth revisiting. Keep up the good work. Yeah, doesn't surprise me he said that. And then he goes out and brags up and down about how many times he sued the Trump administration. Yeah, that's not political. All right, Chucky Jocelyn says, this is the government agenda, to depopulate and control the people. I'm assuming you're referring to the number of people who are dying on our streets of overdoses. Brandon Robillard said, we can't win. Oh, hi, Brandon. We can't win the war on drugs when we support both sides of the conflict. Yes, indeed. On crime, CT says bail should absolutely be reasonable, but this pattern is unreasonable. Could not agree more. That is a perfect way to sum it up. Says, I agree with Brandi. This defies common sense. Our police put themselves in danger to effect these arrests. I agree with that as well. It's like we have police who are doing the best with the numbers that they have. They're putting themselves into dangerous situations, pursuing, violent criminals, and, being assaulted in the process, and then a judge cuts them free on no bail. I can't even imagine what that does to the mental health of a law enforcement officer to see that happen. Ridiculous. On these juveniles in Enumclaw, who apparently have been arrested multiple times, the same kids for stealing vehicles multiple times. Cops go to one of their houses, talk to their parents, and the parents treat the cops like the bad guys. H says, my daughter, who's special needs, hit me when she was 16. She spent one night at the juvenile detention center. She has never laid a hand on another person. Lesson learned. These two comments made me LOL out loud. Jeremy Sorensen says, make ass whoopings great again. Mm-hmm. And then Bunky, playing off Build Back Better, says, beat butt better. I'm not in favor of child abuse, but I don't know what the line is between, a spanking and child abuse. I don't know what they consider it these days.
I do get the sentiment. There is no consequences for these kids, because even if parents are scared to punish their kids. Right. Some parents are scared. Some parents just choose not to. But, but it is. What can you do to a kid? Take away their phone for a day. Take away their car for a day. Those things punish you sometimes more. And so I get the struggle.
It's a real mental thing, though. Can you imagine? Again, can you imagine committing a felony crime, getting arrested for it, going back home and having your parents blame the police?
What kind of message is that?
And then you expect your kid to have a functional life as an adult? Of course not.
Not only you can get away with anything, but it's okay to treat people like that.
Well,
especially cops.
That's why, in part, the criminal justice system needs to do its job, because I'm not going to parent for parents. Like, if you want to be a crap parent, if you're not abusing your kids, who am I to say that the government should come in and intervene? I don't know at what point. I'm very in favor of parental rights, which we'll actually talk about in Sanity Check today. However, if the parents aren't going to do anything, the criminal justice system sure needs to. And if they're not getting any discipline at home, then, a little time in jail might be just the ticket for them. Mm-hmm. So something to think about. JC, maybe parents need to be held accountable for their juvenile children's crimes. Charge the parents. Also, and then you'll see some changes at home. I don't agree with that all the time.
Well, no, you can't charge somebody for somebody else's crime. Right. However, maybe there should be an aspect of you're not, parenting.
Right. Well, so restitution, the parent might have to pay that.
Or, I know there's situations where, if you didn't go and pick up your kid, if Like if they, let's say, ran away and somebody found them and you didn't go pick them up from the situation because there was a terrible situation happening, then you would be charged with neglect and like not picking up your kid, right? But if you're also not parenting your kid, I mean, there's a couple situations we've heard about where the parents didn't want him, the grandparents didn't want him. Like if you're not taking any responsibility for this kid, like that should be a form of like, we got to pursue those cases more often
and try to figure out what's going on. I mean, I know, for instance, if I don't know if it's the case in Washington, I think it was where I grew up, that if you provide alcohol to your minor child and somebody dies as a result, like one of their friends, then you can be held accountable. Now that's more of a direct causal tie to the ultimate crime, right? But at what point is right. So there's got to be something else. I don't know if you put this comment in there, but I saw someone say that the parents should go up on billboards saying, I'm not parenting my kid. But then I'm worried about how that would be abused.
Public shaming.
Right, for parents who are like, I'm not going to support my child's gender reassignment surgery. And then Jay Inslee puts them on a billboard or something. So,
But you know what, like this cop talking about it, telling us these stories so that people know, like, we're arresting these people and their parents are choosing not to take it seriously.
We're doing our jobs and we appreciate law enforcement. I mean, important. Pierce County, we talked to Derek Sanders this week, the sheriff in Thurston County. They're clearly, they're fed up. They're beyond fed up. They're like, we're going to talk about these things, and we appreciate it. Stacey Gregory says, if my parents knew I was out stealing cars, committing crimes when I was a teen, they would have turned me in themselves. I would do the same with my kid. This is so crazy. It is crazy. Cindy Shoopman says, I struggle when things don't make sense. I purchase a six-pack of beer at the grocery store, lights flashing, and an employee scurries over to scan my ID, yet I can run out the front door with the same six-pack without paying and no questions asked. That is a good point. The drug policies in the state make this scenario even more ludicrous. Yeah, I always, for instance, when I get a parking ticket, which happens, I'm like, look, here I am, I'm making a living. Parked my car, maybe paid for it and went over on the time. Like I paid for 2 hours.
Or yesterday when you just didn't have time to park, so you parked in the yellow zone.
It was a loading zone. And I was loading and unloading my bridal dress. Why are you tattling on me?
Hey, I'm just explaining why you might get a parking ticket.
First of all, you are legally allowed, if it's not a commercial loading zone, to be there for 30 minutes. And I paid. I paid for that. Yes. Yeah. No. First of all, people, I'm not going to allow this to go unchecked. I paid for 30 minutes of parking in the loading zone yesterday. I'll show you my receipt, which is perfectly legal.
Do you pay for loading zone?
You do.
Like a special rate for loading?
Unless it's a commercial loading permit, then you can park there for free and load commercially like a truck. But a loading zone, as long as you're loading, which I was. Did you see how many things I had to carry in?
Okay, yes,
I paid for it.
Your shoes and all.
How did we get on this? All I'm saying is, I swear to God, if one day I get like a ticket for jaywalking, I'm not paying that. I'm not paying it. All the things they let criminals get away with, there are a lot of times where I'm driving on the interstate and I want to just go in the HOV lane. Because I'm like, you know what? All the stuff they let these people get away with, I'm working hard, I'm paying my taxes. I want to go in that freaking lane.
I know. Well, I mean, if you get away with it a certain amount of times, the one time you don't, you got your money's worth.
Listen, sorry. Don't do that. I'm being a bad influence today. We are not those people. It's just frustrating. I agree. Let me see. On the guy who tried to kidnap the bikini barista getting the plea deal, Michelle says, so creepy. 50 days sounds like enough time for him to think about how to do it again without getting caught. Maybe she decided this because she was afraid of what he might come back to do to her. But still, what? I mean, I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but, no contact order? What does that do, ultimately? I mean, if he was really dead set.
Well, and he's obviously somebody like this is crazy. But in addition, he thought that just zip tying an arm was going to just pull her in the window and easy peasy. Well,
yeah, he's clearly...
I mean, that would have drug her along the side of the car and injured her and all these other things, right?
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a zip tie.
It was a zip tie. He tried to zip tie her wrist and pull her in. But like that, you're not going to easily pull in somebody through a window just because they have a zip tie on their arm.
I think we've demonstrated that this was not a genius.
Right.
This guy wasn't the brightest bulb.
That's what I'm saying. So there's obviously somebody that's crazy and they're just supposed to obey this law or obey all these stipulations.
Right. Not going to happen.
No.
All right. On our Florida Report segment for today, Brandon says, after the article about the Colorado kid, I went and bought my own Gadsden flag. Love it. Let us know if you have any trouble hanging it up at your house.
He's probably the fifth person I've seen say that. So just in our little group.
Oh, I like that.
I can imagine those sales went up sky high this week.
And the award for my least favorite comment of the day goes to Denise Young. I think Miranda's hat would look cute with her bridesmaid dress. Don't give her any ideas. Don't encourage her.
I kind of want one.
No. Absolutely not allowed. Okay, great chat today, you guys. Great chat. Okay, let's get to our closing sanity check, which takes us down to California. All right, we've talked about really what I think is already a slope that we've embarked down full speed, which is the erosion of parental rights in our state. We're seeing it in Oregon. We're seeing it in California. Anything that happens in either of those two states is bound to happen here. We've talked about it when it comes to parental rights in education and knowing what's happening with your kids at school and not allowing schools to keep secrets from you, like your child is going to school and using a different name and identifying as an entirely different gender. And then you want to question why kids have mental health issues when they are literally like playing two different human beings during the day and night. Wild stuff. So anyway, there is a school district in California that is bucking kind of a statewide policy, and they have a policy requiring parental notification when students change gender identification. This is the article from CNN. So now what is the Attorney General of California doing? He is filing a lawsuit against the Chino Valley Unified School District, which is about 30 minutes out of Los Angeles, saying that the forced outing policy wrongfully endangers the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of non-conforming students who lack an accepting environment in the classroom at home. So it was just in July that the Chino Valley Unified School District, on a 4-1 vote, adopted this policy that says, hey, if your kid changes their gender at school before we call them by a different name, we're going to notify the parents. And now the Attorney General of California, that is how he is deciding to use the power of his office, sounds familiar, doesn't it, to strip parents of their right to know about something so critical that is going on in their kids' lives. And the truly insane part of it is his rationale for suing is he's saying this policy of telling parents endangers the mental and emotional well-being of kids. And you can't see how the opposite of that is true. And I would also encourage for anyone who wants to celebrate things like this, anyone who wants to celebrate some of the laws that have been passed in Washington state that allow kids to run away to a shelter away from their parents, that strips parents of their rights, a government who would strip someone else of their rights is a government who will strip you of your rights. And you would be wise to remember that. So be very careful about anyone cheering on something like this. I don't doubt anybody who's watching is that level of insane. But I think that the rights that we have to seek to protect the most are the rights that are being taken from other people, because our rights will be next. All right, that is today's sanity check. And that is the show for today. Although I'll make a note, Nicole and I are making a little public appearance this weekend.
I'll also make a note. Miranda says, I'm doing it. In the comments.
Oh my gosh. Who is that again? Hey, can we, let's ban, whose comment was that? No, now I'm serious.
Oh, sorry, I already.
Who was that? Whose comment was that? You're banned. We're disabling your YouTube account. Now I need to know. I'll figure it out later.
Oh, man.
Now
I never delete those that quick, but.
I know, Nicole's already in our thing, deleting stuff. Anyway, I'll figure it out. I forgot. You're banned from commenting on YouTube. Nicole and I are going to make a little public appearance at the Washington State Fair this weekend. I roped Nicole into it on Sunday because we're going to Kane Brown. I'm going to be at a booth inside the Showplex on Sunday from 3 to 6 p.m. I'll be there. Representative Kelly Chambers is going to be there. Nicole's going to come. Remember, Let's Go Washington. They have 6 initiatives to the legislature that they have going on right now, including restoring our failed police pursuit policy, getting rid of the gas tax, which is really the carbon tax, the tax on capital gains. And so we're going to be there from 3 to 6 p.m. So if you're at the Washington State Fair, please come to the Showplex, find us, sign all 6 initiatives, and then enjoy some fair food. Maybe watch Kane Brown. What?
Oh, Denise. And she just gave us $1 to say.
Oh. Denise Young gave us $1. Okay, you're reinstated. But I swear if my sister wears that, not that I don't love the hat. I love the hat. But I don't want her to wear it to the wedding. I'm going to be standing up there. I'm going to be coming down the aisle, and she'll be like...
Yeah, someone else also commented on her nails, calling back scratchers, and that was probably your most bridezilla thing, was you told your sister she couldn't have
yeah, she has these long, like, Edward Scissorhands nails, and I'm like, Miranda, they got to be shorter. Not short, just shorter. All right, I digress. It's 1 p.m., thanks, Nicole. Thanks, everyone. That has been today's episode of Undivided. We have a great Sundays with Subscribers coming up. We're going to be joined by King County Councilman Gurmai Zahalai, who has his opinions about what can be done to stop all the shootings happening, particularly in his district. He and I disagree on a lot, but I will say, we did find some points of common ground. So we'll have that interview coming up on Sundays with Subscribers. If you're not a subscriber already, we've had some great interviews on the Sunday show lately. Sign up, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. Help us give common sense a comeback. Denise Young, you're forgiven. See the rest of you on the live show on Monday.